I'm going to start by talking about several different ways that you can make money in the business of wedding photography. And we're going to start at the very beginning. Now, even though you may be already experienced in the field of photography or already established and are doing weddings, I still would like to have you pay attention to this because this is going to relate to you also, but in a different way. So let's start at the very beginning. So let's say that other than knowledge in photography, maybe you've completed my crash course in wedding photography and you already know a lot about photography, but you just don't have any experience yet. So let's start right there. Now, and let's take it a little bit further, and let's even say that you have no equipment even. And what you want to do then is what I call, you want to become an intern. And what an intern is, it's somebody who comes along and will help carry your bags, hold your second light for you, and just keep an eye on, in general, watch your equipment. And in exchange for you helping out at the wedding with the equipment and so on, they're going to help you, and you can also watch and see what's going on. So in a way, you're actually going behind the scenes and seeing everything that happens at a wedding. So you're actually on the job. You're getting on-the-job training. Very, very valuable here. And many times this may be a really good and quick way to learn, to get some actual experience in doing this. And your goal here is not to remain an intern, but of course to become a second shooter for that studio that you're helping out. And then we're going to talk about that later. But getting back to being an intern, let me just start by telling a little story. And just keep in mind, when I tell these stories, they're not just for fun or for the heck of it, but they really have a great lesson that I've learned, and they're going to give you a lot of knowledge that can help you. So by listening to these stories, you can get a lot of knowledge out of them. So getting back to the intern. Now, back in my studio in Pennsylvania, I've had several calls of people ask me if they can just come along and just learn from me, help me carry my bags and so on, so just to assist me in general. And that's how I got my first intern, actually. But the intern that I got was from another state, and he came along many different times just to learn from me, and I guess he realized the potential that that job actually had. Now, I do want to mention, though, when I do have an intern, I generally don't really let them do all this work for free, even though that's the deal, although it's not really free. You're giving them a wealth of information. But if somebody is really good and they're really dedicated, I'll always give them a few bucks at the end of the day. But again, their goal is to become a second shooter. But anyway, I had somebody call me from another state, and I said, sure, you can come along. And they came along several different times. And then I realized the importance of having an intern along with my second shooter. So for most of the time, it was myself, and it was also a second shooter. And then it was the intern who just watched our equipment, things like that, just being a regular assistant. And I realized the importance of doing that. Now, there was also quite a few people locally that wanted to do that, but I didn't really want to do that with local people because of the competition. So most of the time I said no. But I did take along one other gentleman that was I met him, I was doing a wedding, he was the best man, and he wanted to get started. So we became friends, and I didn't mind. He was in the next town over, and just getting started. So in exchange, he did help me also. Now also, this is an important lesson too. When I sold my Pennsylvania studio and I moved to North Carolina and I worked in a home studio that I put in a separate camera room and an office and a sales room, I didn't really have any contacts at all. I knew nobody in that area. So what I did was I started with my web page. And I also took out a Yellow Page ad. Even at that time, Yellow Pages lost their popularity and weren't even used that much anymore. I did book a wedding shortly after I got there. And then one day I got a call. I said, hey, my name is Tommy. I love photography. and I was on your website and I loved your pictures, and I just wanted to know if I can just come along and just to watch what you do, and I'll be glad to assist you, and you won't have to pay me anything because I already have a good paying job. So that was when I realized, hey, wait a minute, there's a lot of people that are starving for knowledge, and this is really a great way. So in a nutshell, I had Tommy come along, and then I also did his engagement portrait as a favor. And then he did something really, really important. He actually gave me 2 names of people that were also looking. One was looking to be an intern. He really had no experience. And the other one was already a qualified shooter. So I actually hired the qualified shooter. And then the other person came along also as an intern. And I'm not even sure if he started with having his own equipment. And then shortly afterwards, he did buy a Nikon system. It wasn't the top of the line, but it did a great job. But the thing is, this guy was so good. Even the equipment he used wasn't the top-notch, top of the line Nikon stuff, but didn't matter because his images were so good. And he really, really was just such a great worker and such an amazing photographer. Through the years, I would say he became my best, after a while, second shooter. So very, very important lesson to learn both ways. So if you really have no experience yet, here's what you do. You just call, or you can email, but I recommend calling because I noticed that most of the time if somebody calls me, we'll get together, I might have an appointment, where if I get an email, I'll just file it, or even a resume. Sometimes I'll get a resume, I'll look it over, and I'll call them back. But the best response seems to come when I get a phone call, because this way I'm talking to them, and a lot of times I can feel their personality coming through and see what kind of passion they have for photography. So that's what you're going to do. Contact the studio and ask them the same thing that we talked about. If you can be their assistant in exchange for just watching them work, and maybe you can ask them some questions, and then also possibly becoming a second shooter for them. And of course, when you start off, as an intern, just say you won't have to pay me, but I would like to eventually become a second shooter for your studio or for your business. So that is a great way for you to get started if you have some knowledge, like in taking these courses, but you don't have the experience, and even if you don't have the equipment, great way to get started. And next we're going to talk about another really great way that you can make some money in wedding photography.